was involved in some way in the creation of Wata Games and knew that he was on board with their mutual goals. And if you needed any further evidence of this pre-existing relationship, Jim Halperin, the founder of Heritage Auctions, was listed on the Wata website as an advisor. Another business that Wata had a relationship upon creation was Just Press Play, a distributor of used video games which was founded by Zach Geig. Just Press Play also announced that it would be selling Wata certified games. Now, in order to create a speculative bubble, you need a way to spread information very quickly. You need to draw in new eyes and make potential buyers aware that a market is building. The easiest way to achieve this by far is to create headline-worthy events that can disseminate through the media. In this case, it was the purchase of a Super Mario Bros. Cart for $100,000 in February of 2019. Before this sale, the previous most expensive video game ever sold went for $30,000, so this new sale was a pretty big deal, big enough to generate headlines. But the even more interesting thing is who bought this game. It was purchased by three men. The first was Jim Halperin, founder and chairman of Heritage Auctions. The second was Zach Geig, founder and owner of Just Press Play. The third was Richard Lecce, who has one of the largest video game collections on the planet. Heritage Auctions then issued a press release about the sale, because of course the purchase was never about collecting the game, it was about publicity. And if this wasn't obvious enough, Jim Halperin advertised in this press release that the game may end up in a future auction. Dennis Kahn, CEO of Wata Games, also chimed in, stating, quote, "Wata certified video games have been selling for record prices ever since Heritage began auctioning them in January. While many video games sell regularly for 5 figures, breaking the 6-figure mark shows that the hobby's upward trajectory indicates no signs of slowing down." So what you have here is the chairman of the auction house buying a game for a record price and then creating a press release about his own purchase in which himself and the president of the grading company are stating that the value of games is going up. He then advertises that his own game will be going up for auction in the future through his own auction house. And his plan worked. The press immediately jumped on this, and many articles about the purchase were written. Kahn's tactic of pumping up the perceived value of games would be seen in every article.
It looks like he has a little shark fin.
In a Kotaku article, Kahn states, "I've always said, video games are going to go the way of comics or cars or coins. It's only a matter of time until a video game sells for $1 million. In an Ars Technica article, both Kahn and Halperin were again pumping up the perceived value of games, with Halperin stating, "There are bets on what will someday be the first $1 million game, and many collectors believe that this will be the one." It's so strange to me that news articles allow the owner of a game to advertise that its worth is 10 times what they paid for, and not a single eyebrow is raised. They did everything they could to raise awareness about the sale. They even took the cart onto Pawn Stars, claiming it was worth $1 million. This appearance was the perfect opportunity to establish Wata Games as the authority in grading, despite having only existed less than 1/10 of the time that VGA had. Pawn Stars even had Dennis Kahn come on, and again he pumped up the value, implying that it was worth at least 3 times what they paid. Remember what I said about grading companies.
Obviously, Pawn Stars isn't real, but this is very different than what they usually do.
Dennis even faced backlash about this from intelligent collectors, who knew what he was up to. But of course, this didn't stop him. He went on Pawn Stars multiple times, valuing games at insane prices. I can give you dozens of examples, but the point is that there was a very large, very effective campaign to establish Wata as the authority on video games, despite having only been created. It was critical that Wata was seen as the be-all and end-all in video game grading, because then the words of its CEO, Dennis Kahn, would be more effective in increasing the value of games. Kahn would continue to abuse his authority as the head of Wata Games for the next few years, appearing in countless articles and interviews, and always pumping up the price. In fact, he's still doing it, even with the ridiculous price of $1.5 million that the recent Super Mario 64 went for in July. In a Verge article covering the record-breaking sale, Kahn states, "I think that we are going to continue to see record-breaking sales." Again, this is purely to make people believe the price will continue to go up in order to fuel speculation. All of this press is driving up prices, but it's only 1/2 of the equation.
Are Mizkif's boxes Wata?
Games, but
not
the
VGA?
people buying these games aren't who you'd expect. If you thought they were video game collectors hoping to complete their collection, you'd be wrong. Let's take a look at who is really buying up
Miz
these
has
games.
VGA. Okay.
Video game collecting has taken an interesting turn in the past few years. Over the last decade or so, I've been a big fan of watching collectors' videos on YouTube, where they proudly show off what they've amassed. In my experience, genuine collectors love sharing their prized possessions, but that's not what we're seeing with these record-breaking sales. Nowadays, the buyers of these expensive games are hidden from the public. Identities are kept secret, and no one takes credit for anything. It's all really strange. Heritage auctions will never tell you who the buyers are, or even if money was actually exchanged. However, there are ways we can tell who bought some of the games, and this is where things get weird. Several weeks ago, I was investigating the relationship between Wata Games and porn stars, given that the original appearance of Wata on that show was obvious collusion between the grading company, the auction house, and the show. In particular, I was researching the appearance of a Mike Tyson's Punch-Out that Dennis Kahn valued at $80,000. Through a Google search, I found something very interesting. It was a purchase agreement of the exact same cart. The owner of the cart, Brian, had sold it to a company for the exact same amount that Dennis had valued it at. The buyer was RSE Archive, LLC, which trades as Rally. Rally is a platform that allows investors to buy and sell equity shares in collectibles. To put it simply, people can buy a fraction of a video game, and if the price goes up, they can sell their slice to someone else in order to make a profit. It's essentially gambling on the price of collectibles, and it's as silly as it sounds.
That's so dumb, yeah.
None of the people who buy equity in any of these collectibles actually own it. It's purely to try and make bets on the price and earn a quick buck. The purchase agreement I found for the Mike Tyson's Punch-Out was an SEC filing. Companies that hold these items and sell equity in them need to disclose their assets to the SEC, so we can track exactly what they buy and how much for. There are 3 fractional share companies that have sprung up in the past several years that are selling equity in video games. Mythic Markets, Otis, and Rally. Each of them was formed immediately following the launch of Wata Games. Through their SEC filings, I can track their purchases. Rally bought a Super Mario Bros. For $140,000 in 2020. This was the same cart that would eventually be sold for $2 million just this month. From Heritage, they acquired this GoldenEye for $22,800, this Grand Theft Auto for $13,200, and this Donkey Kong for $38,400. Mythic Markets also bought this Metroid for $46,800. Otis also bought a Mike Tyson's Punch-Out for $130,000. From Heritage, they bought a Pokemon Yellow for $78,000, this Golf for $18,000, and many other private purchases. Aside from these fractional share companies, we can also see people buying games from Heritage and trying to flip them on eBay. For example, a Super Mario that was bought for $84,000 in September of 2020 is now sitting on eBay with an asking price of $1.5 million. I haven't heard of a single legitimate collector buying any of these expensive games. It's entirely speculation, purely for profit. But there have been attempts to fool the public into believing that actual collectors are buying these games. And one of the biggest cheerleaders for this fake narrative is Eric Nyerman. In 2019, a slew of articles sprung up about a video game collecting dentist who bought $1 million worth of video games. The original article was posted by the Washington Post, but if you know the real story, this article is insane. It describes Eric Nyerman as one of the world's most avid video game collectors, but in reality, he had only been collecting for several months. He began only in 2019 at the beginning of this bubble. There are many people who have been collecting games their entire lives, but this man comes along and he's instantly the most avid collector in the entire world.
Well, he does look like it.
The article claims that he bought the games,
means business.
But this is also not true. He wasn't even using his own money. The money was put up by a group of investors, not by Eric Nyerman. The article becomes even more suspicious when Dennis Kahn again rears his head to hype up the market. Heritage Auctions also shows up advertising that the market is increasing. Eric makes his intentions clear by stating his opinion that video games should be selling for millions, which of course would benefit him greatly after his purchase. So why is the Washington Post and many other news outlets touting Eric, who only entered the video game market in 2019, as the forefront of collecting? Why is it falsely stating that he bought the games when it was actually an investment hedge fund? Why are Wata Games and Heritage Auctions always there to give their opinion on the market? It's because
they own the
this
government.
Is not news, it's propaganda. Eric Nyman is part of the small group of people at the very top, building this bubble in an attempt to make money. He is a talking head with one purpose: to trick people into believing the video games he owns are worth millions, which he will then sell. He can be seen alongside people like Dennis Kahn, always attempting to inflate the market. And this isn't a secret. He admits his intentions freely.
Of course, that same week, I discover on Heritage Auctions vintage video games, which I never even knew existed. And then when it played through in my head, I'm like, oh my God, this is like so much better than cards for me. I mean, also, it was a new and emerging market, like you guys are having with NFTs. It's that excitement of like,
they're doing
wow,
NFTs now.
This even catches up a quarter of to where cards have gone. You know, we could see 100x returns just at the beginning, you know, because it was so new. But as a collectible investment, this was like everything that I saw on a Mike Trout card, but like to the max on steroids. And for me, it was a time machine. It was literally like if you could like I always said to myself, I would look at like Nat Turner's collection of cards on Instagram at that time, and I was like, wow, if only I could go back 10 years and just like hang out with him and just buy everything he was buying. And, you know, it's that time machine that everyone has.
Has any